Hunting by Stars. Chapter 28. A Road, a School, and an Ambush. Rose. Because of Derek's still healing injury, they had to take it slow. Slower than Rose could handle, but she did it anyway. She focused all of her nervous energy into taking care of Derek. At first, he was resentful. He didn't like being babied, and sure as hell didn't like being one-upped in the providing role. But after the first night, when Rose slept up against him, not bothering to ram blankets in between them for extra space, he seemed to come around. Rose knew his mood had a lot to do with the fact that they were still going after Frenchie even after the House of Horrors, even after the bear trap. But this was the mission, and she was still on it. Rose could tell Nam loved the woods as much as you could love something so vast and terrifying. But as much as they loved the spongy ground, the smell of air without mold, the freedom of being an individual, they obviously had trouble falling asleep without walls. "I'm going to keep an eye out for a bit," they said, watching the other two settle into the tent. "I'll be in later." "Thanks for taking first watch," Derek answered. He really was grateful. He needed to rest as much as he didn't want to admit it. There were a few moments when it seemed like Nam had something to tell but didn't, like when Rose stopped to set a foot trap on their path in case anyone was pursuing them, or when she resisted lighting a fire to cook dinner in case it was seen by the chief. Surely he was close behind them. The next morning, they all heard it, the sound of rubber on cement and the low squeal of mechanics. The road. Rose fought every instinct in her not to run full tilt and burst out of the bush into the road. Instead, she paused. "We need a tree. Plenty of them out here," Nam responded. "One big enough to see what's near," she continued, "but not sparse enough that will be seen." They circled until they found one. Rose dropped her bag and stretched. "You're going up there?" Nam's head tilted all the way back. "It's so high." "Yep, it's how we scout. You'll learn." Rose didn't hesitate any longer. She launched herself up the trunk like French had taught her, hand over foot like a monkey. When she reached the first thick branches, she climbed them, swinging from one to the other, using momentum and that first push to keep her up her speed. Nearing the top, the foothills got thinner and the trunk began to sway, so she matched her movements to the trees and found a spot to perch. There it was, like Black Creek with cracked bottom, the road stretching out through the sticky pines and birches. Rose felt excitement pouring out into her chest. Even better, about a mile up as the crow flies, was a squat brown building. The school. She took a minute before she climbed down to do something she hadn't done since Minerva died, purposely head to the road to attempt a rescue. The wind and height making her feel huge, the anticipation and fear making her feel small. She closed her eyes and prayed. Her feet hit the ground, and she immediately shouldered her pack. "School's a mile north. Let's go." Nam and Derek exchanged worried glances, then followed her determined steps, each one bringing them closer to what they knew was certain death. They made good time now that there was wind in their sails and a destination in sight. They stopped once for half an hour to drink some water, share a couple of cans of tuna, and rest. Rose wouldn't sit down, not even while she ate, using 2 fingers to spoon the fish into her mouth. "What's the plan exactly?" Nam was nervous, both about getting to the school and about pissing off Rose. "We get there, and we look for any entrances, any weak points, any ways in." Rose spoke around the food in her mouth. "And then what, Moresu? We're frigging stormin' with one hunting rifle and a sharp stick?" Derek was less worried about Rose's reactions at this point. He was either an hour away from dying or an hour away from losing Rose. He was in no rush to get to either. "No, smartass. We see where we can get in and out, and then she waved her dirty fingers in the air. "We just figure it out." "Figure it out? We just figure it out?" He raised his voice. "Oh, that's rich. And what's your plan then?" She spat back. "My plan is to go back to the camp. This is a suicide mission, and I didn't just survive a horde of literally bloodthirsty maniacs to die at a school." He was on his feet. "You survived the maniacs because of us." She pointed to Nam and herself. "You needed us, not the other way around. So maybe sit the hell down and let the grown-ups talk." Guys." "Shut it, Nam." Derek turned to them. "Don't you yell at them. They didn't do anything wrong." "Guys, what?" They both screamed at Nam. "There's someone coming." They pointed behind Derek, into the thick green between them and the road. It was too late to reach the gun. There were 2 bodies dressed head to toe in black, running through the trees and headed directly for them. The first one crashed into the clearing and grabbed the gun where it lay against the rock. The second jumped over a log and landed beside Nam, grabbing them around the shoulders and holding a hunting knife to their neck. "Everybody calm down." It's a woman's voice. "Just calm down. No sudden moves." The person with the gun kept it down, pointed toward the ground. Derek thought about making a grab for it, but they sensed it and lifted the rifle in his direction. "Easy now, big guy. Easy." Another female. Who are you? The first one asked, knife still millimeters from Nom's skin. No one. We're no one, Rose answered. If you're no one, what are you doing this close to the Institute? She sounded angry, stressed, out of breath, maybe, but there was no anger in her voice. Rose looked from one to the other, trying to find the words to stay safe, trying to find a way to keep the mission alive. She couldn't find an angle. She was tired and hungry and out of ideas. We've come for someone. Derek's eyes got big. Rose, what the... Real stupid, the shorter one said, still pointing the gun at Derek. I know, he answered. Real stupid. You need to get out of here now. Rose was confused. What? Go on, get out of here. Walk back the way you came. There's no way you're getting in. Never mind getting back out. She relaxed her grip on Nom and pushed them away. Now! The knife wielder pulled off her baklava, revealing a pleasant face and close rows of box braids. Her eyes were friendly, but she still held the knife out at chest level. Listen, you gotta go. It's not a good plan. You'll just get taken in, and not in any way you want. Rose had never seen a black recruiter before. Even now, with weapons drawn and a standoff underway, the medicine of seeing someone who resembled her was fortifying. Who exactly are you? Nurses, allies, the one with the gun said, pulling down her bandana. And we're telling you to get lost before the recruiters head this way. It's hard to know when the new patrol's being sent out. They keep it random. Don't have to tell me twice, Derek said, reaching for the gun. After a nod between the women, she handed it over. Let's go. Nom picked up the bag and slung it over his shoulder. I'm not leaving. Rose stiffened her legs as if she were planting herself in the earth. Jesus, Rose. Derek was exasperated now. Come on, you heard them. It's impossible. Let's just head back to camp. We came all this way, dealt with bear traps and a goddamn vampire cult, and you just want to walk away without really trying? She resolved. The woman exchanged a look. Vampire cult? It's a long story, she sighed, but we're here and we're not leaving without them. Who? One asked. Who did you come for? Frenchie. Saying his name out loud made breathing difficult. Francis Dewsum. Again, the nurses exchanged a look, this one holding more than confusion. Rose picked up on it. What? What is it? A dozen different answers ran through her mind. First of all, I'm Alice, and this is May, the woman answered, putting her knife in her belt. You'd better have a seat here for a minute. But Rose had taken her stance, and now, with news on the horizon, news that she was pretty sure was going to be bad, she couldn't move. I'll stand. Alice sighed. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys know about the program. They all shook their heads. Alice went on to explain how some of the residents of the school were taken in to be reprogrammed. Sending out decoys has been pretty successful over the year. We ran into a few, Rose remarked. They grabbed one of our family, a little girl. We made sure neither of them made it back to do any more harm. May lowered her head and kicked at the rocks by her feet. I am truly sorry for your loss. It takes months to go through the program. Used to take years, but they've introduced new methods. Your friend, Francis, he was here. Was? It was the word that stopped all her relief from bubbling up. I'm sorry to tell you that Francis was fast-tracked through the program. By all accounts, he was successfully integrated and is now working for the Department of Neurology. Alice paused to let it sink in. He's out in the field now. Rose narrowed her eyes, repeating this over and over in her mind. Then she started to make noises, small pushes of air and voice-like at the beginning of a wail. Her knees bent and she hunched over on the ground. I'm sorry to have to be the one. Alice stopped. Rose lifted her head and she was laughing. She laughed so hard tears filled her eyes, laughed so hard she fell in the way into her bum, and then laughed some more. Rose? Nom took a tentative step toward her. When she calmed down enough, she said, Oh, that's brilliant, brilliant. She was back on her feet, looking at her friends with crazy intensity. Don't you see? He escaped. He totally duped them all and escaped. She spun around to face Alice again. When did he leave? We're going to catch up to him. The woman looked to Derek and Nom for help, then back at May, who remained silent. Why wasn't anyone answering her? Did no one see that this was the best possible news? Now they didn't have to try and get into the school. He was out here in the open. He had done it. She should have known he'd find a way. Listen, he's not faking. He really did go through the program, and he really is working for them now. Alice talked a little slower, trying to calm the girl down. Lady, there is no way, no possible way French is a traitor. He is as solid as they come. If you knew him, you'd never say otherwise. Rose was still full of mirth. Where's my bag? We got to get going. He brought in a family, May said it low. She didn't want to say it, but she had to. There was no way she could let this girl walk into a trap, not without knowing the truth. What? Rose stopped halfway to her pack. What do you mean? He brought in a family. The day before yesterday, 2 people, a woman and a little girl. No, Rose was shouting. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Derek ran to grab her, squeezing her tight, trying to get her to shut up. Come on, Rose, be quiet. You're going to get us all taken in. I'm sorry, but it's true. 7 years old. They're going through processing now, Alice finished. Now Rose was crying for real. She thrashed in Derek's grip and broke free. He would not. He just... Rose. Derek was as gentle as he could be while trying to shush her. What wouldn't you do? What wouldn't any of us do, really? Not that, she screamed. The sound of her own voice echoing in the shadows shocked her to quiet and then to action. She gathered herself and took off in the trees before another word could be spoken. Derek sighed, watching her back get smaller. He turned to the nurses, who were both scouring the space around them in case they had been heard. Then he pointed his lips at Nam. Grab what you can, he instructed, hoisting his bag and the satchel of food and gripping the gun. He dared not put it away, not with all the ruckus they'd been just kicked up. I'm sorry, but you had to know. Alice was pulling her hood back over her head. May had already repositioned her bandana and started back into the bush. No, thank you. We appreciate it. Take care, Derek waved, and then they were off, the allies back to the road and the runners into the trees after their hysterical friend. They found her pretty quick. She wasn't thinking, wasn't even seeing clearly, and so she wasn't too fast for them to catch. They walked behind her without saying anything, and after a while she turned back and grabbed her pack to carry herself. That night, they camped without tents or a fire. They were too close to the school, and early the next morning, they started back toward the resistance camp. Without hope, the journey seemed twice as long. It was days before they saw the first syllables telling them the camp was nearby. Nam was getting nervous. What if they weren't welcomed once they got there? Derek assured them as best he could that there was a place for them. But between being the sole navigator and making sure Rose didn't hang herself from a low branch because of French, he didn't have time for niceties. Just trust me, it'll be great. That was the most he could offer them right now. The trio hadn't eaten much, and their pace was a little off. It took forever to make their way in. So when he finally saw the first scout high up in the split elm, Derek was so relieved he cried out. He broke into a jog, whistling and waving up to Manny, who gave the all-clear signal from the branches. We're here, he called back. We're home.